79 years, almost 8 decades on this planet, and only now with white hair and hands that tremble a little when I hold a coffee mug, have I grasped a truth so simple it's almost ridiculous. You know what's funniest about it all? I spent my whole life chasing happiness in the wrong places, like it was treasure hidden in some locked chest, when all along it was right under my nose. But nobody told me. Nobody sat me down when I was 20, 30, 40, and told me the truth I'm about to tell you. And maybe that's why you're here, because deep down you also feel something's off, that something's missing, even when it seems like you have everything. Let me tell you something. For 56 years of my life, I chased happiness like it was a butterfly. The more I ran after it, the more it flew away. I thought I'd be happy when I got my dream job. I got it. I still felt empty. I thought I'd be happy when I bought my own home. I bought it. The feeling lasted 3 weeks. I figured I'd be happy when the kids grew up and graduated. They grew up, they graduated, and I still had that hole in my chest that nothing seemed to fill. You know that feeling, like you're always waiting for something, always postponing happiness until some event happens? That's exactly how I wasted over half a century. I'm 79 now. My body doesn't obey like it used to. Sometimes I forget where I put my glasses. I have to write everything down so I don't forget I wake up with aches and pains I didn't have 10 years ago. But you know what? I'm happier today than I've ever been in my life. And that makes no sense at all, right? How is it possible to be happier now with less time ahead, less energy, fewer possibilities? The answer to that question has completely changed how I see everything. I was 62 when my life fell apart. It was a Tuesday in March. I remember because it was raining, that fine, persistent rain that seems to never end. My wife, Helena, whom I'd been married to for 37 years, told me she didn't recognize me anymore, that I'd become a stranger, that she felt like she was living with a ghost who only showed up to sleep and complain. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I worked so hard. I pushed myself so hard to give her the best, to give our 3 children the best, to maintain the lifestyle we'd achieved. And there she was, with tears in her eyes, telling me none of that mattered if I wasn't truly present. That same week, I found out my best friend, Roberto, had died. 59 years old. Sudden heart attack while driving to another day of work. Roberto was a bank manager. He worked 12-hour days, including weekends. He always said that when he retired, he'd travel the world. He'd go fishing. He'd spend time with his grandkids. He died 3 years before retirement. He never did any of what he planned. At the funeral, I looked at the casket and saw myself in there because I was exactly like him, always postponing life for later. You know what I spent all night doing after the burial? Reliving memories. I remembered all the times Roberto called inviting me to go fishing, and I said I was busy. All the times he suggested a barbecue on the weekend, and I made up an excuse because I had work piling up. All the conversations we never had because I was too tired, too stressed, too worried about things I can't even remember now. And there he was, inside that wooden box, and we'd never have another chance to fish together, to laugh together, to simply exist in the same space, breathing the same air. And you know what hurts the most? Realizing I'm not alone in this. I'm sure you're also postponing something, waiting for the right moment that never comes. Tell me here in the comments, what are you putting off? You can write it like this: I'll be happy when, and fill in the blank. It could be when I get that job, when I buy that house, when I lose weight, when the kids grow up, whatever it is. Sometimes just putting it into words makes us realize how trapped we are in this snare. And you know what? Your comment might wake someone up who's doing the exact same thing right now. So tell me, what are you postponing? It was after that week, after Roberto's funeral and the talk with Helena, that everything started to change. I spent 3 nights without sleeping properly, stewing over it all. I'd sit on the porch in the pre-dawn darkness, staring into space, wondering where everything went wrong. When did I stop living and just start surviving? When did joy become a luxury and worry become routine? And then, on one of those early mornings, sitting on my porch, looking at the garden I never had time to appreciate, I understood it all. Happiness wasn't something I needed to achieve. It wasn't a goal. It wasn't a destination. It wasn't a prize you get after suffering enough. Happiness was happening while I was waiting for it. It was in Sunday mornings having coffee with Helena. It was in my kids' phone calls. It was in the sound of rain on the window. It was in the taste of the first sip of hot coffee. It was in everything I ignored because I thought it was too small, too simple, too ordinary. I spent decades of my life believing the biggest lie society sells us. The lie that happiness is an achievement, that you have to earn being happy, that there's a checklist of things you need to have, be, or do before you allow yourself to feel joy. That lie is killing millions of people. It's killing you right now as you read this, as you postpone your dreams, your important conversations, your hugs, your laughter, waiting for a perfect future that will never arrive. You know what I discovered? That all the happiness I was seeking was disguised as moments I considered insignificant. I remember once, I must have been in my early 40s. I was coming home from work completely exhausted, frustrated because I hadn't closed an important deal. I got home, and my youngest son, who must have been about 7 at the time, came running to show me a drawing he'd made at school. A drawing of our family, me, Helena, him and his siblings, all holding hands, with a huge yellow sun in the sky. I took a quick look, said it was nice, and went upstairs to take a shower. I didn't hug him. I didn't ask about his day. I didn't sit on the floor to hear the story behind the drawing. I was too caught up in my adult problems to realize that genuine happiness was right there, in the hand of a 7-year-old boy wanting his dad's attention. Today, that boy is 42. He's a father of 2. And last week, he came to visit me, brought his grandkids, and we spent the whole afternoon playing dominoes on the porch. We laughed so hard my stomach hurt. We told old stories. He asked about my life, about regrets, about lessons learned, and I told him exactly what I'm telling you now. Don't wait until you're 79 to realize that happiness isn't in the future. It's now. It always was now. But we can't see it because we've been programmed to always want more, always chase the next level, always think what we have isn't enough. I worked for 43 years as a civil engineer. I built buildings, bridges, overpasses, things that will stand long after I'm gone. I was part of multi-million-dollar projects, received awards, was recognized in my field. And you know what? None of those constructions gave me a tenth of the joy I feel when my 5-year-old grandson jumps on my lap and asks me to tell him a story. No award, no professional recognition, no salary raise compares to the moment Helena holds my hand while we watch TV together at night. The problem is, we think these moments are too small to be the happiness we're looking for. We romanticize the idea of happiness, turn it into something epic, extraordinary, unattainable, when in reality, happiness is the opposite of all that. Happiness is ordinary, it's common, it's simple. It's so simple it seems impossible that it's just that. I'll tell you about Maria, a neighbor I had for 20 years. She was a retired teacher, a widow, lived alone in a little yellow house next to mine. Every day, without fail, she'd wake up at 6 in the morning, water her garden plants, have coffee on the porch reading the newspaper, and at 9, she'd head out for a walk in the park. Every day the same routine, and every day she was smiling. One day I asked her how she managed to be so happy doing the same things. She looked at me with those clear eyes full of wisdom and said, "My dear, I don't do the same things. I do things I love every day." There's a difference. Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep at 86 last year. I went to the funeral. The church was packed with people she had touched just by being who she was, people she taught to find joy in the simple things. That day I thought, I want to die like that. I want to die having truly lived, not just existed, because there's a huge difference between living and existing. I existed for most of my life. Woke up, went to work, came back, slept, repeat, paid bills, solved problems, accumulated things, but I wasn't living, I wasn't feeling, I wasn't paying attention, I wasn't present. And time kept passing, until one day I woke up at 62 and realized I had lost entire decades on autopilot. I had such a rigid routine, it felt more like a prison than a life. Monday was morning meeting day. Tuesday, I had to review projects. Wednesday was site visit day. Thursday, I had to close reports. Friday was a mad dash to get everything ready for the next week. Weekends were for recovering from exhaustion and mentally preparing for Monday again. 20 years in that cycle. 20 years that passed in a blur. 20 years that, when I look back, seem like a week. Because when you don't pay attention, when you don't truly live, time just disappears. It simply disappears. And the worst part is, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being responsible, dedicated, a good father, a good husband, a good professional. But responsibility became an excuse not to live. Dedication became synonymous with absence. I was so busy building a better future that I forgot to live the present. And you know the biggest irony? That better future I was building never arrived. Because the more I achieved, the more I wanted. The finish line always moved. The goal always changed. It was never enough. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer honestly, even if it hurts. When was the last time you stopped to really look at the sky? Not just glance, but stopped, lifted your head, and observed the clouds, the colors, the immensity? When was the last time you hugged someone you love without rushing, without thinking about what you need to do next? When was the last time you ate something, paying attention to the taste, the texture, the pleasure of eating, instead of just swallowing it quickly because you have more things to do? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be happy with what you already have, instead of thinking about what's still missing? These questions are important because they reveal the truth about how we're living. And the truth, most of the time, is painful. We're so busy chasing a future improved version of ourselves that we forget to live the version that exists now. We're so worried about getting somewhere that we forget to appreciate the journey. We're so focused on tomorrow that we let today slip through our fingers. I remember when my middle daughter, Carolina, was 16 and going to her prom. She came down the stairs all dressed up in that blue dress she had picked out months before, her hair done, makeup, everything, and she was beautiful, radiant. My little girl had become a woman, and I hadn't even realized when. Helena started crying, grabbed the camera to take pictures. And me? I glanced, said she looked pretty, and went back to watching TV because there was an important game on. An important game. As if any game was more important than that moment. As if I'd have another chance to see my daughter coming down those stairs for the first time as a woman. Carolina lives in another state now. She's 38, a doctor, married, happy. And when she visits, she always talks about that night, about how her mom took hundreds of photos, about how emotional she was. And me? I was just a vague presence who said she looked pretty. That's one of my biggest regrets. One of many. If I could talk to my 30-year-old self, you know what I'd say. I'd tell him to stop. Just stop. Breathe. Look around. Realize that he already has everything he needs to be happy. I'd tell him to call his parents more because they won't be here forever. My father died when I was 47. I lived 15 minutes from his house and went months without visiting him. There was always an excuse. There was always something more urgent. And then he died. Suddenly. And all those conversations I planned to have with him, all those Sundays I was going to spend at his place, it all remained forever in the realm of unfulfilled intentions. At the funeral, I held my mom's hand and promised I'd visit her every week. I kept that promise for 3 weeks. Then I went back to my usual routine. My mom died 6 years later, and I had visited her maybe 20 times in those 6 years. 20 times in 6 years? She lived 15 minutes away. I'd tell my younger self to sit on the floor and play with the kids, because they'll grow up in the blink of an eye, and he'll regret every minute he didn't spend with them. I'd tell him to hug his wife every day and tell her he loves her, not because it's Valentine's Day or their anniversary, but because she's there by his side, and that's everything. I'd tell him to eat that dessert without guilt, take that day off without remorse, sleep in on Saturday without feeling like he's wasting time. I'd tell him to live more and worry less. But most importantly, I'd tell him to understand that happiness isn't something you achieve when everything is perfect, because nothing is ever perfect. There will always be a problem. There will always be a bill to pay. There will always be a worry. If you wait for perfection to be happy, you'll die unhappy. And that's a tragedy. It's the biggest tragedy of all. The truth about happiness that nobody tells you is that it's not a permanent feeling. It's not a state of constant ecstasy. Happiness is moments, flashes, precious instants that happen in the middle of life's mess and chaos. It's a child's laughter. It's the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. It's the feeling of sun on your skin. It's lying in bed after a long day knowing you did your best. It's looking at someone you love and feeling gratitude for their existence. It's small, it's simple, it's now. And you know what the cruelest paradox of all is? I only understood what happiness is when I stopped chasing it. When I gave up thinking I needed to deserve it, earn it, achieve it. When I finally accepted that life doesn't have to be extraordinary to be worthwhile. That joy is hidden in the things we find mundane and unimportant, that the secret isn't having more, but appreciating better what we already have. Let me tell you what changed after that week that turned my life upside down. I started small, because big changes start with small steps. On the first Monday after Roberto's funeral, I woke up, and instead of jumping straight into the shower and rushing out, I sat on the bed for 5 minutes. Just sat, breathed, looked out the window, watched the sunlight coming into the room. 5 minutes. It seems like nothing, but for someone who spent 50 years rushing, 5 minutes of pause were revolutionary. Then I went down for breakfast, and instead of eating, standing up while looking at my phone, I sat at the table with Helena. I asked how she'd slept. For real, not that automatic question we ask without expecting an answer. I looked her in the eyes and waited for her to speak. And she did. She talked about a dream she had, about a backache that was bothering her, about a desire to visit her sister who lives in another city. And I listened, really listened. And you know what happened? For the first time in years, I felt like I was having a real conversation with my wife. We weren't just sharing the same space. We were connecting. That night, I called my 3 children, one by one, long conversations. I asked about their lives, their jobs, their relationships, their dreams. I apologized for being so absent. Some cried. I cried. It was hard, but it was necessary. And since that day, every week, I call each of them, not to nag, not to give unsolicited advice, but to listen, to be present even from a distance. I started noticing things I had never noticed before. The garden at my house, for example. It had red roses that Helena planted 10 years ago. 10 years, and I had never really looked at them. I started going out every morning just to see the roses, to smell them, to touch the petals. It sounds silly, but these small things started to fill me up in a way no promotion at work ever did. I retired 6 years after that transformative week, at 68. And you know what I did on my first day of retirement? I woke up without an alarm, had coffee on the porch watching the birds, read an entire book, a book I had bought 15 years earlier and never had time to read, had lunch slowly, took an afternoon nap without guilt, and at night I had dinner with Helena, lighting candles on the table as if it were a special occasion, because it was. Being alive is a special occasion. Being with the one you love is a special occasion. Everything is special when you pay attention. Today, at 79, with a body that complains more than it obeys, with a memory that sometimes fails, with white hair and deep wrinkles that tell the story of almost 8 decades of life, I can say with absolute certainty, I am happier now than I was at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50, because now I know, now I understand, now I see. I wake up in the morning and I'm grateful to be awake. I have coffee with Helena and I pay attention to every second because I know we don't have forever. She's 76. She's been with me for over 50 years. And every day by her side is a gift. I play with my grandchildren and put everything else aside because these moments are everything. I sit on the porch and watch the trees sway in the wind, and I feel a peace I never felt when I was chasing success and recognition. I talk with old friends and laugh about silly things, and I realize that exactly this is what matters. I have a notebook where I write down 3 things every day. 3 things that made me happy that day. At first, it was hard. Some days I'd stare at the blank page not knowing what to write. But with time, I started to realize that every day has at least 3 moments of happiness. Sometimes it's the taste of coffee. Sometimes it's a call from a child. Sometimes it's just the fact that I'm not in pain that day. And when I reread these notebooks, I realize my life is full of happiness. It always was. I was just too blind to see. I'm not saying you should stop having ambitions. I'm not saying you shouldn't work hard or pursue your goals. I'm saying don't let the pursuit of those goals steal your ability to be happy now. Don't sacrifice the present for a future that may never arrive. Don't postpone your life waiting for the perfect moment, because the perfect moment is now. It always was now. It always will be now. And if you think you got all the time in the world, that you can fix this later, that you'll really start living when things calm down, let me share a secret my 79 years have taught me. Things never calm down. Life is chaotic, it's messy, it's unpredictable. And if you wait for the calm to start being happy, you'll wait forever. So don't wait. Please, don't wait. Call that person right now. Tell the people you love that you love them today. Take that photo. Go on that trip. Eat that dessert. Dance to that song. Laugh until your stomach hurts. Cry if you need to cry. Feel it all. Live it all. Because this is your only shot. This life, this body, this moment, this breath you're taking right now as you read these words, it's all fleeting. It's all going to end. And when you get to the end, you won't regret the things you did. You'll regret the things you didn't do, the words you didn't say, the hugs you didn't give, the moments you let slip away because you were too busy being unhappy. If you've made it this far, it's because something resonated. Maybe you're seeing your own life in these words. Maybe you're realizing you've been putting off your happiness for too long. You're not alone. Millions of people are doing the same thing right now. This channel exists for people like you and me. People learning that happiness isn't a destination, it's a journey. Subscribe here for more real stories, more lessons I've learned in these almost 8 decades of life, more wisdom that only time can teach. Hit that like button if this video moved you, if it made you reflect on your own choices, if it sparked something inside you that was dormant. And please tell me in the comments, what are you going to stop putting off? What are you going to start doing today to be happier with what you already have? I'd love to read your story, to know that somehow I managed to help you wake up a little sooner than I did. Let's build a community of people who have chosen to live, not just exist. The clock is ticking. It doesn't stop for anyone. What are you going to do with the time you have left?